Hey. Alright. Famfrit. Definitely going to take a look at the team comp first. Which is Sora, Onion Knight, Garnet, Eiko, and Prompto. I don't think there's really all that much that's super interesting about this team, other than this is the first instance of cross-type chaining that I've done, which is Garnet, who uses a plus 50% magic Generation 2 chain on a physical team, and it works just fine. Not only does it work just fine, but considering the fact that you need a Dispel in this to get rid of the Protect, I guess you don't need it if you have a real lot of damage, but I don't have enough damage to completely cut through the Protect, so I need a Dispel on the team, so the more people you can throw on the team with the ability to do that, the better. And on this team, there are, well, 4 people that can do that, but I don't have the ability slots to support one less person, because, you know, my damage output is really not that high, considering the because when we look at Sora, I unfortunately don't have his LMR, which allows him to dual cast. So he, as a Spellblade, is limited to using Storm Spell Strike, which is only 4 hits. So he only does 40,000 max damage a turn. Even with Thunder God mode, that's just not that much anymore. But it is enough. It is enough. And he generates a lot of soul break points, so much soul break points that even casting Wall and Shelga at the start of the fight, he still gets over 1,250 soul break points within 25 seconds, which allows him to use his Burst Soul Break at one point for more than 40,000 damage a turn. That's pretty much all it's for. Even when you consider that it adds like a 30% attack buff on him, it doesn't really do all that much. What I really use it for is for just to increase his damage potential for a single turn. And then uses Arcane after that. So the Thunder God mode and a 6-star ability is a whole bunch of soul breakpoint generation. That's what we have with Sora here. And you did hear that right. I do cast Wall with Sora, even though I have Onion Knight's LMR. And that's normally what you do if you have an Onion Knight's LMR, is instant cast out your Haska buff on the first turn, and then on second turn you instant cast out Wall. But why I decide to use Wall on Sora instead is because he has Thunder God mode, so it is only a 1-second cast, so it's not that much of a difference. And had I not used Wall, then Sora would take his first and second actions before the chain is active, even casting the chain on first turn with Garnet, because Sora starts out with haste, because that's part of his legend dive, that he'll start out with haste if, you know, he's using an element. He goes so fast that he takes both of his turns before the chain goes off. So if I use Shelga on him on first turn, and then Storm Spell Strike on second turn, it really doesn't do all that much. I think it barely clears 20,000 damage. So why not give him something to do for utility on second turn so he can start up damage on third turn, and instead use that instant action. The instant action actually doesn't even matter for Onion Knight, but use that second turn on Onion Knight to increase his damage potential for later in the fight. As you can see, he has Ripper Bolt as his second ability, and the faster that he gets that stacked, the more he's able to do later on in the fight, because, you know, he very quickly gets it up to 5 hits thanks to Flash Disaster. An awesome combination of abilities, Flash Disaster and Ripper Bolt. And because of Onion Knight's Legend Dive, 35% chance to dual cast Celerity abilities, which does affect the stacking of Ripper Bolt. So you could use Flash Disaster, dual cast, use Flash Disaster and dual cast. That counts as 4. And then use Flash Disaster one more time. That counts as number 5. And then every time you use Ripper Bolt from that point on will be a 5-hit ability with a 3.75 multiplier. It's really just below 6-star, you know, capability. He does more damage than Sora at one point because he's attacking so quickly because of his ninja mode, the physical USB, and he does 5 hits instead of 4 from Sora. That's how good that Ripper Bolt ability is if you can stack it quickly enough. And Onion Knight is actually one of the best characters in the game to do that. I think the only one, maybe chat can correct me with this, there's probably somebody out there, the only other one that can, you know, use the Flash Disaster Ripper Bolt combo as well as Onion Knight can is Lightning. And without Enlightening or anything, Onion Knight does a ton of damage because he dual casts and uses a chain, which increases everyone else's damage too. So that's what Onion Knight does in this fight. And let's see, next we have Garnet, who is mostly utility, but she actually, interestingly enough, because of the incredible damage increase of Generation 2 chain, and the fact that we have Onion Knight and Prompto on the team, who are great chain builders because of their speed and their, well, Onion Knight's dual casting. Garnet can, for some of her Valley Garmandas, get up to about 6,000 damage a cast. Because Valley Garmanda has such a high multiplier. And that's after it's, you know, shaved 66% of its damage, because this is the physical vulnerable Magicite. So she does that because I don't have anything else for her to do. The Bard abilities aren't great. I could increase, I could use the crit buff, was it Ode to Victory, but that overwrites Onion Knight's crit buff, so that's kind of pointless. I could give everyone 15% attack with, I forget the name of it, but the 3-star Bard ability, but that overwrites Onion Knight's USB. And I could use another Bard ability to give people an increase, 10% increased attack every time I used it, but definitely not as impactful as using Valley Garmanda to not only deal damage, but add to the chain. That's really is the best thing I can do with her. And I would consider using Kiraja if I needed to, but Eiko with Lionheart actually completely heals this fight on her own. Doesn't need any help whatsoever. And that's why I use Eiko here. So nothing to talk about with Eiko. Prompto uses his first turn to Spark Offering because the chain isn't active yet. And then from second turn on, it's Tempest Snipe because the chain is active, and I'd rather use 6 hits to add to the chain rather than a percentage chance to add in Imperil with 2 hits. So Tempest Snipe, and if USB is active, then I use USB. So Prompto's pretty easy. Magicites, definitely not an ideal collection of Magicites. Well, it looks like it is from the display on the right, but it's not, because I don't think I have any inherits on the second King Behemoth. We got the Water Magicite release quite early. I wasn't expecting it for like another week from now, maybe 2 weeks from now. So they're not that developed, but it was good enough. I went with my plan that I talked about on the 5-star Magicite like discussion, that I care about having 1 strong King Behemoth, or Behemoth King. It's BK. 1 strong Behemoth King and 1 strong Quetzalcoatl. And that's what I've got. So I got 1 of each of those and a weak King Behemoth King, and 2 Evrays. Alright, so let's get to the first turn, which is going to be... I'm going to Shelga on first turn with Sora. Normally what I would do is choose the long cast time, but it doesn't matter since he's already hasted, because I'd normally choose the long cast time with the wall user, because I want them having less time where they don't have haste, but he starts out with haste, so it doesn't matter. And the reason why I use Shelga first turn is because if I use wall first turn, then it interrupts the actions of the other characters in the party, and it delays them just a little bit. It's a small min-max, and it doesn't even matter. And then Onion Knight obviously uses his USB. Prompto goes before Onion Knight, which kind of screws me up sometimes when I do attempts, because I always think Onion Knight's going to go first, so I'm clicking that USB spot. But Prompto goes first and uses Spark Offering, because the chain's not active yet. Garnet immediately chains, because this team, because of Prompto and his Machinistism, goes really well with the chain, so he can start stacking it quickly for everybody. And then Eiko uses Protectka, and like I said, it is actually a pretty typical setup of just exploiting a chain with fast attacks. But there are a couple of fun wrinkles. Now we wall. And the reason why I Flash Disaster here, even though Onion Knight, because of his LMR, has an instant cast charge already, the reason why I Flash Disaster is because on some attempts, I chew through Ripper Bolt. Ripper Bolt is actually more valuable of a hone than Flash Disaster is, because I only use Flash Disaster to stack up the 5 required actions, damaging actions that it takes to get Ripper Bolt to max, and then I use Ripper Bolt exclusively for the rest of the fight. So I have a million, at most 3 charges of Flash Disaster remaining at the end of the fight, since I don't use it after that. So it's not a vital hone to me. Flash Disaster and Ripper Bolt do the exact same thing when Ripper Bolt is non-charged. Ripper Bolt is 3, 4, or 5 attacks with a 0.75 per hit. So that would be 2.25. And Ripper Bolt at 4 hits, 3.0. At 5 hits, 3.75. No dual cast there, so that only counts as 1. And that attack right there is actually pretty important. And I set up my party specifically for this purpose, is because of the representation of Final Fantasy IX here and their love of the trance mode. This is how Eiko heals the party on her own. Because I get 2 free heals very early on in the fight. And now you see, I have the chain. Now Prompto switches from Spark Offering to Tempest Snipe. Keep on using Flash Disaster on Onion Knight. And here you're going to see me target a heal on Onion Knight with Eiko. This is so he's healed. He got hit with that giant first volley. He cannot heal himself a couple turns from now. So he needs to get healed, while Garnet and Eiko take care of themselves. Passively. Sora does his thing. He's just going to Spellblade, and then near the end of the first chain, that is when Sora is going to use his BSB. This is to maximize the damage of it, because there's really not all that much point in him using his BSB now. The only thing I would do, or get from using his BSB when it becomes available, is 6 extra hits on the chain, which is not anywhere near as important as him using it at the very latest on the chain to get the most damage out of all 8 of those hits that I can. Oh, it's not even +6, it's +4. It's 8 hits on the BSB, 4 hits on Tempest, or Storm Spell Strike. Onion Knight still using Flash Disaster, gets a double cast there. Every double cast is great. And see, this is the hit, the great hit, where both Garnet and Eiko trance and heal themselves. You see, Onion Knight has been healed already. And because Sora and Prompto did not get hit on the first volley at the start of the fight, they can survive for another few turns. So I've basically got a half Medica on the party just because of the trance modes. And this is what allows Eiko to just, without any entrust or anything like that, heal the entire fight by herself. With Lionheart as her RM. I forgot to talk about RMs. But there you go. That's what allows her to do, is the Lionheart RM. So Onion Knight's up to 5 stacks now. And because of the ninja mode and the celerity cast time of Ripper Bolt goes off extremely quickly. So he really does output a lot of damage in a very short amount of time. Starts out small, but once Prompto gets the Imperils up, and Onion Knight starts contributing to the chain really quickly like that, you see it adds up really quickly. No crits on all 5 of those. That's depressing. Valley Garmanda's doing a surprising amount of damage, even against a physical vulnerable boss. And here's where the real damage starts. Prompto starts his quick cycle, and he goes to a 30% Imperil. The other 10% was from a Legend Materia proc. And now, I have plenty of warning, because this boss, like a lot of 5-star bosses, have a free turn at the start of their phase. So when the boss hit 80%, it switched phases, and it faithed at the start of its second phase. Normally, well, for a lot of teams, what you're going to want to do with this boss is, because its faith is a plus 50% magic buff, you can use any magic break, any single stat magic break, to remove that buff. Even though debuffs really aren't that effective against Magicite, they're 30% effective. It still does a little bit, but not that much. It's a different matter when you're removing a buff, because it does remove the 50%. It overwrites the 50% and also debuffs the boss. So that's a big difference. Because I'm using Last Stand in this fight, it's just, Eiko's a great healer. And, you know, all Last Stand healers are. It allows me to absorb the massive damage that the boss is going to be doing, because this boss is actually kind of a lightweight. Not only does it have that faith turn that starts the second phase off, but its third phase starts off with Protect on one turn, and then Faith on a second. That's 3 dead turns of no damage. When you're using a Last Stand healer, that means that as long as you have time to refresh your Last Stand is yet another free turn. So when a boss gives you that many free turns, it actually becomes really easy to heal with a Last Stand healer without much help at all. And to add on to that, Famfrit is even worse in damage output, because it has Graviga turns. The gravity turns cannot kill you, so that is a free turn, because that cannot trigger Last Stand. And you'll see that coming up. We use our initial Last Stand here. We absorb the giant hits that the boss puts out. Cannot get killed. So this Savage Tsunami is going to do a lot of damage. And for a normal comp, you don't want to take that. Last Stand, whatever, because you didn't kill me. Next turn's a Graviga. Didn't kill me again. And then on the following turn, okay, finally Last Stand's popped. At which point, Eiko has a USB active again. Refresh, and just go again. Alright, here, At about 15.76 seconds, because Onion Knight used his USB instantly at the start of the fight, his USB status, his ninja mode, lasts 15 seconds. So it's going to expire in the 16-second range. The nice part about ninja mode is that every action that you take during it increases your cast speed even more. So the last action that you take before it expires is extremely fast, especially if you're using Flash Disaster and Ripper Bolt, which are already fast cast times. Not only fast, but Flash Disaster is instant. He's taken 6 actions, so he's going to cast extremely quickly. So we're going to recast his USB to get that ninja mode back. Otherwise, if we wait one more turn and cast his USB, it'll be a full 2.5 second Soul Break cast time. And it'll just waste a lot of time. Or we could just not recast it at all and cast 1.2 second Celerity cast time Ripper Bolts for the rest of the fight, which is slow. And then run out of our 50% attack buff at about 26 seconds, which is bad because this is a 30-second fight. So you need to cast his USB again sometime. Might as well be at the point in the fight where it casts the extreme fastest that it can. And that's right now. And you'll see the cast bar, it goes pretty damn fast. See? Wonderful. You see, Eiko even has a turn to use another Kirana, because she knows we can't die for another 3 turns. Gravaga, thank you for the free turn. We're at the end of the chain now. That means it's time for Sora to use his BSB. Onion Knight goes, now that he's recasted his USB, it's Ripper Bolt until the end of the fight. Except for a small wrinkle, which we'll see. Because I messed up something. Well, I didn't mess up, but something happened that I had to react to, and we do something a little different. So, now 2 turns have gone by since that Eiko heal. 3 people's last stands are going to get popped now. I don't care that he's doing 1,000,000 damage because of that 50% magic buff, because it's not like the boss can kill me anyway. Because he gives me way too many free turns. Onion Knight doing a hell of a lot of damage with Ripper Bolt. And that's a cool, what, 72,000 damage on Sora's BSB. So we got everything we possibly cut out of that chain. And we recast. Unfortunately, she doesn't have enough soul break points to use her BSB in this fight, or that would be even better. Because I could definitely use 20% more in peril. Now, because we have 30% in peril, even though we're starting the chain over, Sora and Storm Spell Strike do so much damage that even on the new chain, he's basically capping. Even on non-crits. Now here, this is where I hover on Dispel, because remember what I said. When he enters his last phase, his first action is to Protect. And Protect is bad. What's nice is Garnet is in trance mode, so it reduces the 1.5 second cast time Dispel to 0.75 seconds. So I can just hold this. The problem is, sometimes stuff doesn't work out. Even that small 0.75 second cast time window interrupts some things, and you're going to see that it does interrupt this fight. Oh, and I can hold this and not feel guilty about it, because she only has 1 charge of Valley Garmanda left anyway, so it doesn't matter. She doesn't need to speed up or anything. I'm not losing anything by holding this action. So here comes the Arcane, because this is the way you need to play Sora. He's a 25-second character, using Thunder God mode, and the fact that he starts out with an element, which only lasts 25 seconds. And I don't have his glint, or any of his glints, so I can't refresh that. So he needs to cast this with enough time for the Arcane to go off before 25 seconds. So here's where the issue comes into play. This doesn't happen on many runs, but it happened on this run, where the phase change and the Arcane go off at the exact same time, and I don't have enough time to slip this in. You see the cast time on Dispel is going quickly, but it's not going to be quick enough. The Arcane is going to run into Protect, which is the worst case scenario for damage output. I'm swearing up a storm right now watching the Arcane do only 160,000 damage when it should be doing in the high 200s. Yay, now we Dispel. But the run does a lot of damage, and at this point we have so many Imperils, and the chain is back at a decent height, that Onion Knight is going to be dealing a lot of damage every turn, and so is Prompto. And Onion Knight attacks very quickly, and can dual cast. $5,500 per hit on Valley Garmanda is really nice. She does contribute something to the fight. The boss proceeds, even though it faithed to not kill anybody because last stand. Tempest Snipe is doing a hell of a lot of damage. And here I am worrying about this run, but I got a lucky dual cast off here. We're at Magic Pixel territory, and I'm wondering, you know, I even paused, I'm like, what do I have left that can hit? Because we're at 29.37 seconds. And then I remember, I have Flash Disaster. I never use it at this point. But that gives me an extra 27,000 damage, and bam, the boss is dead. It normally doesn't go that poorly, because I did over 100,000 more damage with Sora's Arcane by this point, but I decided to keep this run and go with the commentary because it was a fun ending. Just, I guess, to show that Flash Disaster is a really, really neat ability. And, yeah, it really has a low multiplier. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it has, a couple uses. Which is, sometimes you need to attack instantly. And the other is generate a lot of soul break points really quickly. Because it's a 6-star ability, even though it's fast cast, it still generates a ton. And it generates it instantly. But I don't use it for this fight, obviously. Onion Knight ends up with so many soul break points by the end of the fight, it's scary. What do I have for Sora? Well, I have his Burst Soul Break and his Arcane. That's it. Is there any questions about the run? Unfortunately, I don't feel like there's much complicated about that, except if 5-star Magicite have shown me anything, and if using Generation 2 Chains has shown me anything, it's that being able to use healers without Mako Might on them is really valuable, and one of the One way to cheese it is to just have people trance. And this fight is great for it because I got 2 people that can trance. And I actually have 2 people that can trance in the Geoskyno fight, and I abuse both of those as well. And I'll talk about that when we get to that. I know it's 3 a.m. here, so I didn't expect that many people to have, like, to even be awake, or have the capacity to ask questions. But at least it'll make a good video, and hopefully people post comments if they have questions. But instead of Garnet Chain, you have Prompto Chain? No, Garnet is not a DPS in this fight. She's there for the chain. I would put in Lightning. So if you have Prompto, you're in a much better position. Because Garnet... I mean, the chain is extremely valuable, but if I didn't have to run Garnet, I would not. If I had Prompto's chain, I'd just find someone else to put Dispel on. If I even needed Dispel. It's possible that the team you're running with Prompto and Chain and Lightning and her stuff is able to stack the chain so high that Protect stops mattering. Worth what? What are you paying for it?